The year is 2006. I got a PS2 for Christmas that year and it was the coolest present I ever had up to that point. I played some amazing games on PS2, but one has always had a special place in my heart: Kingdom Hearts. I absolutely loved this franchise growing up. In fact, until I played Dark Souls back in 2013, this thing was always in the running for my favourite game ever. That's why it pains me so much to say Kingdom Hearts 3 was my Cyberpunk. Obviously, the game didn't release as a buggy, broken mess or anything, but I had such an insane amount of hype for it, such insanely high expectations, that looking back, I really don't think that it could have realistically lived up to any of them. And it didn't. I really didn't like the game, for various reasons. So much so that my passion for the entire franchise just died on the spot. But it's been almost 6 years since Kingdom Hearts 3 came out, and I've recently had that urge to return to the franchise. The disappointment that I felt has started to subside a bit, and I've been wondering if maybe I was a little bit too harsh on it back when it first came out. So I've made it my goal to revisit every single Kingdom Hearts game, with the hopes of falling back in love with this franchise that I once loved so much. And today, to kick off this series, we're beginning with the one that started it all. The original Kingdom Hearts, developed by Squaresoft and released all the way back in 2002 for the PS2. So whether or not you're a long-time fan or you know nothing about Kingdom Hearts, grab some snacks, because this is going to be a long one. So, after that crazy intro sequence, we get spawned into this giant stained glass portrait of Sleeping Beauty, just to remind us that yes, this is a Disney game. To call Kingdom Hearts an action RPG is like calling Wukong a Souls-like. It's 100% correct. Yes, Kingdom Hearts is a bit simplistic in its design. You don't have any manual stat allocation, so build variety is fairly limited. There are 3 options: a sword, a shield, and a staff. You can unlock every skill in the game regardless of what you choose, but the order in which you unlock them changes depending on what you choose and what you sacrifice here. Now usually when I play Kingdom Hearts, I choose the sword without fail and then get rid of the shield. Apparently using the shield and then getting rid of the staff is the more optimal route, but regardless, I wanted to shake things up this time. I don't tend to rely on magic at all in the Kingdom Hearts games, which might have something to do with why I'm not very good at them. But this time I wanted to use magic a lot more, so I chose the staff, aka the power of the mystic, and I sacrificed the shield, aka the guardian. I definitely won't come to regret this decision later on. Afterwards, we're presented with a quick combat tutorial. Basically, press X to attack, L1 to lock on, and circle to jump. Aerial combat is generally quite a bit faster than ground combat, so a lot of enemies can be dispatched more easily by jumping and spamming attack, especially once we start to unlock aerial combos and finishers. More on that later. For now though, a simple 3-hit combo takes care of this first set of Heartless. The entire intro sequence essentially acts as one big tutorial, laying down basic mechanics like how to push boxes and how to open doors. I suppose it's somewhat important if you're new to the franchise, but if you've played this game before, it's a bit of a drag, and I wish they let you skip it. It's kind of boosted a bit with this iconic presentation, though, with each platform being a different Disney princess, and that choir in the background does a lot for the atmosphere. Partway through, we're teleported to a sunny beach and asked a series of personality-based questions. I don't usually take these questions too seriously, so I randomly chose I want friendship, I want to be strong. I also chose that I'm indecisive. Actually, it turns out that it's more important than I've always thought it was. In all of my years playing this game, I never actually looked up what it means to choose these options. But apparently these questions determine how quickly you level up, with Dawn being fast up to level 40 and slow up to level 99, Noon being medium all the way through, and Night being slow up to level 40 and fast up to level 99. Of course, because I'm an idiot, my choices resulted in Night mode, essentially making the game a lot harder because it takes ages to level up early on. The game gives you absolutely no indication about any of this, by the way. At least the weapons are relatively easy to understand. Obviously, choosing the staff will accelerate MP gain and spell-based abilities. But this Dawn/Dusk crap, that's really cryptic. Anyway, with a couple more rounds of Heartless, a quick save and a flight of stairs behind us, we finally get our first taste of a boss fight with the Dark Side. This menacing giant Heartless is no pushover, especially if you don't know how to dodge his few attacks. Thankfully, spamming jump attacks is a fast and consistent way to get hits in, and we can take him down quite easily, gaining our first level up and a small boost to our strength. Kingdom Hearts loves to throw ominous lines of text at you, which make absolutely no sense at all, and I'm sure it still doesn't. What does "you are the one who will open the door" mean? What door? I'm sure it's nothing. With that, we're off to... Now that we're out of Sora's dream...
It wasn't a dream.
Sorry, geez. Now that we're out of that definitely not dream, Sora wakes up on the sunny beach of Destiny Islands. It is expanded on quite a bit in later games, but for now we don't actually get to see a lot of the world, just the beach where we get to explore around a bit, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Sora spawns on the beach to this creepy girl hovering over him. Her name is Kairi. She isn't originally from Destiny Islands, and Sora asks if she can remember anything about her hometown, to which she conveniently says no. But she would like to see it one day. Sora says he wants to see it too. In fact, he wants to see all of the world. Cue this edgelord called Riku casually rocking up, carrying half of a goddamn tree. He mentions working on a raft to leave the island and go and explore all of the other worlds. Ah, how naive they all are. Cue the title card. This opening cutscene does a good job of establishing the personalities of each of the main characters, especially the rivalry between Sora and Riku. I don't know if you ever had this kind of dynamic with a friend growing up, but it kind of nails that feeling of having a somewhat playful rivalry, but still being good friends. At least for now it does. Honestly, for as simple as this setup is, there's that lingering question of just what the hell was going on in Sora's not dream. What isn't interesting though is being dropped into the game and immediately being given a list of items to gather to build the raft. I have to admit, it's pretty bold of Square to literally open the game with a series of fetch quests. But then again, it's not like they've stopped in recent years. Anyone play FF16? To be fair to Kingdom Hearts, there isn't really any pressure to find the items straight away. Rather, Destiny Islands acts as a kind of sandbox where you can freely explore this small beach to get to grips with the controls. And get to grips with them you should, because there are some slightly outdated things about the game that you probably need to adjust to. For instance, Sora only moves in 8 directions despite the game originally releasing on a console with an analog controller. It's a bit of an odd decision and it looks a bit jarring, but it doesn't affect the gameplay that much. It's by no means a big problem like in a game like Dark Souls 2. I never really had an issue with dodge rolling or evading enemy attacks, but I thought I'd mention it anyway as I honestly don't remember it being like this on PS2. I'd love to be corrected though. I'm sure we all spent hours and hours on Destiny Islands as kids, right? The beach is absolutely iconic with its tropical theme, palm trees everywhere including that iconic palpu fruit tree, waterfalls, blue ocean, and this cave. The attention to detail here is amazing. With all of these chalk drawings on the walls, it makes Destiny Island feel ever so slightly more lived in. But what's this ominous looking door? Even Sora asks where the door leads. I'm sure it's nothing though. There are even battles that you can participate in with some classic Final Fantasy characters. Tidus and Wakka from Final Fantasy X are here, which fair enough because 10 was the most recent FF game out at the time. But the fact that Selphie is here has always been a bit confusing to me because she's from Final Fantasy VIII. Obviously I know that she isn't the only character from 8 in the game, more on that later, but I don't know why they didn't just put Yuna there in her place to make it feel a bit more cohesive, and have Selphie show up later on in Traverse Town. It's not a huge deal, it's just always puzzled me a bit. Anyways, after doing a bit of battling and losing to Riku, we fetch the items for Kairi and ends day 1. The gang sits on the palpu tree and theorise about what could be beyond the ocean. I have to say it's pretty funny to me just how introspective these kids are, but then again I guess growing up on an island and knowing nothing else for your entire life would fill you with questions. You know what my biggest question is right now though? Where the heck are all the Disney characters? I thought this was meant to be a Mickey Mouse game, why am I playing as these anime characters? Well...
Just when I thought I was out, they pull me back in.
That's right, the game has to remind us that yes, this is actually a Disney game. So we're finally introduced to the other two main characters, Donald Duck and Goofy. As it turns out, the king has gone missing. I wonder who the king could be. In a letter addressed to Donald, the king told him that there's big trouble brewing and he needs to go and figure out what's going on. Donald needs to go find someone with a, quote, key, so he needs to go to Traverse Town and find Leon. But I'm getting ahead of myself again. Back on Destiny Island, we have to do, you guessed it, another fetch quest. But this time there's like twice as many things to collect, and we've unlocked another region of the island. This one's less populated and a bit more tropical. Oh, and Riku wants to do a simple race with no catch at all.
I'm captain, and if you win...
I get to share the Palpu with Kairi.
Huh?
Deal? The winner gets to share a Palpu with Kairi.
This simple friendly rivalry is getting serious now. So we need to race to the end of the beach, doing the one thing that Kingdom Hearts is best at, not platforming. There's quite honestly way too much platforming in this game. Actually, the entire franchise is guilty of shoehorning in these dodgy platforming sections, but Kingdom Hearts 1's particularly egregious. Like seriously, who programmed Sora's jump animation? I've never seen anyone jump like that in my life. Anyway, we obviously fail the platforming, and so Riku comfortably speeds ahead of me. I mean, just look at him walking so casually because I messed up so badly. We obviously lost, and wait, I didn't activate the star. And there's no way to quit out, so I have to run all the way back to the star and then back to Kairi again. Thankfully, other than damaging my ego, there's no real consequence for losing, and once that's out of the way, we can go back to exploring and finding all the items that Kairi asked for. Mushrooms, water, coconuts, and a seagull egg. I got a little bit confused when collecting the coconuts, but it turns out that you need to execute a full combo on some of these trees for them to drop. Also, I'm sure that seagull's totally fine with me stealing her egg. Now we need to go back into that cave and collect the last mushroom. Why did the music stop? Okay, Sora, the day's getting shorter. Stop drawing and pick up the damn mushroom.
Who's there?
Who the hell is that?
I've come to see the door to this world.
I won't lie, this scene scared the hell out of me as a kid. Like, why is this random dude just chilling in the corner, spouting primary school level philosophy at me? Is this in Sora's mind or is it actually happening? It definitely sounds like a certain villain we will encounter later on in the game. But I hope you don't have too many questions right now because it won't be explained for a while. We return the items to Kairi, and with that, day 2's over. We share this heartfelt scene with her where they wonder what will await them after they set sail, and after that we head to bed. Cut back to Disneyland, and we get our first glimpse of the gummy ship. This scene really juxtaposes the last one because it not so subtly confirms that Sora and Co.'s raft plan is futile, as it seems the only way to visit other worlds is with a literal spaceship. Back in Destiny Island, Sora can't sleep because he's excited, anxious. I'm honestly not sure. He looks kind of down though. Turns out he should have been anxious because he notices a storm and gets so worried that he jumps out the damn window on the beach, and there are Heartless everywhere. Unfortunately for Sora, his wooden sword doesn't work on them. Riku is standing idly on the island, and when we go over to him, he says some gibberish about a door being opened. Well, it was actually closed a second ago, but I'm not too mad about him getting swallowed by this darkness though, because we do get a cool weapon out of it. Yes, the Keyblade, arguably the single most iconic thing to come out of this series. If you look at early concept art of the game, the Keyblade wasn't even originally intended to be a thing, but it's pretty genius when you think about it. We aren't there quite yet, but a big part of the game is restoring order to each world by sealing a giant keyhole, essentially the heart of the world. So giving Sora a giant key to whack Heartless with, it just gives this game so much of its identity. Obviously, the purpose of the Keyblade deepens as the series progresses, but the first game doesn't throw incomprehensible lore at you for the most part. So for now, all we need to know is that the Keyblade allows Sora to attack the Heartless. Do forget about the opening section where he was whacking Heartless with a staff, that doesn't count. So with the Keyblade in hand and many Heartless slaughtered, we make our way back to the cave, which is now blocked off by a door. Cue another unintentionally terrifying scene where Kairi opens the giant door and vanishes into thin air. Sora's blown all the way back into the island somehow, which is now in the sky, and we have to fight another dark side. Better get used to the constant recycling of bosses. It's a mainstay of the series, I'm afraid. This dark side is a little bit more difficult. It feels as though it has a bit more health than the tutorial version, but employing the aerial 3-hit combo, we make quick work of it again. Destiny Islands is an absolute ruin, and we don't know what the outcome of this almost apocalyptic event is for a long time, but Sora's pulled into some sort of vortex and ends up in...
What a dream. Ah!
Okay, so now Sora thinks he's in a dream. He's rudely awakened by Pluto in a dark alleyway. Following the passage down leads to the main square of Traverse Town. Man, that music really takes me all the way back to 2007. I just had to sit there for a minute just to take in the atmosphere. This is probably my favourite level music of all time. It's just so nostalgic. The hue from the streetlights and NPCs just standing there. Okay, yeah, that bit might be a bit dated. They are very stationary, but this small section of Traverse Town feels so lived in. You return to Traverse Town a number of times throughout the game, and every time you do, you're greeted with the welcoming, warm atmosphere of the first district. From here, you're given free rein to talk to the NPCs, including a Moogle from Final Fantasy, as well as visiting the shops. Because Sora is a broke boy, don't expect to buy anything just yet. Entering the accessory shop introduces you to Sid. Yes, that's Sid from Final Fantasy VII. Obviously, with Final Fantasy VII being the most famous and popular Final Fantasy game, you bet they're going to throw in as many characters from it as possible. And there are a few in Kingdom Hearts 1, but we'll meet them shortly. Sid tells Sora that he's in Traverse Town, and that he's in a different world to his home island. But before we can worry about that, we have to find Riku and Kairi. I don't blame anyone who puts the game down around this point. The combat's quite clunky and slow in the opening hours. You essentially just have the same 3-hit combo that you use over and over and over again. You can't dodge, you don't even know how much health the enemy has, and there's no magic yet, even though I chose a star for the start of the game, and there's an MP meter above my health bar. To touch on the UI too, I think it's excellent. A lot of games around this time really started to prioritise having unique HUD elements, and Kingdom Hearts was really no exception. Things like Sora's face becoming more tired as you take more damage. It's such a small detail, but it's really stylish. It's all laid out really well with your command list in the bottom left. It can be a tiny bit cumbersome to manage in the heat of battle, but I'd argue it elevates the combat when you need to manage all of your items and spells. There are shortcuts for spells, which is great, but you can only assign 3 at a time, so again you need to manage what you want to use. There's a reason why Square Enix still uses the command menu all these years later, even in the more recent Final Fantasy VII remakes. It just works incredibly well and it's really easy to read. So begins the cat and mouse chase of Traverse Town. Remember, Donald and Goofy are looking for a person carrying a key, Sora obviously, but every time we go into a new area, they go into a different one. I remember getting lost and not knowing exactly which buildings to enter, because it's quite a specific order in order to get the cutscenes to play out. But it's actually quite a bit more straightforward than I remember. From the second district, you can go straight into the hotel, and then you have to literally just follow the path from there, entering each door from the clock tower to the Dalmatians' house. And that's another thing, the Dalmatians. They've all been kidnapped, or dognapped, and they essentially act as the main collectible of the game. You get a reward for around every 10 or so that you recover, out of a total of 99. And each chest contains 3, so you can stack up rewards fairly quickly. I don't know what sick bastard locked them away in small chests, but whoever it was, I reckon it was Piglet, can go straight to hell. Moving on, provided you've gone through all of the correct doors, returning to the first district, you notice it's now overrun by Heartless. Finally, we run into Leon, from the hit game Final Fantasy VIII. He wants to steal our Keyblade for some reason, which means we have to fight him. You can win or lose this boss fight and it won't matter either way. Winning grants a healthy dose of EXP, but losing will make Sora pass out from exhaustion. I genuinely don't remember this scene where Riku wakes up in Hollow Bastion. The lack of voice acting here makes me think it's a Final Mix exclusive scene, and there are a few like that sprinkled throughout the game. You see, Final Mix didn't have an official Western release until the PS3 remasters, so it makes sense that these scenes are not voiced, as the actors likely don't sound the same as here. Haley Joel Osment definitely doesn't.
Gosh, there's nobody here. Sure is spooky.
Actually, I'm not scared.
Excuse me,
Did the king send you?
I feel you, Donald. I was a bit scared too when I saw what Aerith looked like in this game. Honestly, out of all of the Final Fantasy characters in Kingdom Hearts, Aerith looks the least like her original design. They do make her look closer to Final Fantasy VII in KH2 though. Kairi? No, just Yuffie. Wait, Yuffie. She's one of my favourite characters in Final Fantasy VII, so I'm really glad she's here. You know, it's always made me laugh how the game flip-flops between these really expressive facial animations and then it cuts to the most basic low-res textures, especially for the Final Fantasy characters. The Disney characters are mostly fine, but there are some exceptions like Aladdin. Anyway, get ready for a big info dump. Aerith explains to Donald and Goofy, and both Leon and Yuffie explain to Sora that the Keyblade is how the Heartless were tracking Sora, and Sora is the chosen one. The Heartless are manifestations of the darkness in people's hearts, something they say everyone has. They talk about someone called Ansem, who was studying the Heartless, but his research has been scattered across all of the worlds. I said this earlier, but the Keyblade's a literal key that can repair and connect the worlds, so Sora's chosen destiny is to go to each world and seal all of the keyholes. Before they're able to finish their conversation though, they're attacked by Heartless, and Yuffie literally murders Donald here, and we have to go save the town from the attack. So you know what I said earlier about how with the early game combat you just spam the same combos over and over? Well, it doesn't get much better here. I did unlock my first ability earlier on though, which I suppose is as good a time as any to talk about ability points. You see, your party can unlock certain abilities in this game, some active and some passive, which can change up combat quite a bit. Each ability costs some AP to equip, and as you level up you unlock more AP, which in turn lets you equip more abilities. This is where the majority of your build and combat variety comes in. I'll get into some of the wackier stuff later, but for now, Stun Impact gives us a chance to finish a combo with a big lightning explosion, which can be useful when you're swarmed with enemies. That said, it's still a 3-hit combo, and the new Soldier type Heartless simply has more health, and they aren't much more interesting to fight, and I'm dead. Trust me, that was the only time I died in the whole game. And we're greeted with the first dodgy checkpoint too. Yes, even though I literally just saved the game, it's kicked me all the way back to the fight with Leon. I'm afraid that awful checkpoints are just a byproduct of the PS2 era in general. Jack 2 anyone? Fighting through the town and making it to the 3rd district, we're finally united with Donald and Goofy. They're our main companions throughout the game. Donald is a mage and Goofy mains defense. Donald is supposed to heal you, but good luck getting him to do that. Even when he has HP left, he'll probably just spam gravity until it's empty, so you really want to quick equip Cure when it's unlocked. But now that we're together, we get to face off against the first boss, and he does not look the same as I remember. Yeah, for some reason, the Final Mix version of the game switches out the colour palettes for most of the Heartless. There isn't really a reason for this other than making it look different to the original game, and it's kind of screwing up all of my nostalgia. This floating knight thing at least functions the same as I remember, and it's quite a creative boss. You can target its limbs to destroy them for health if you need it, but you really need to be attacking his body to deal the final blow. It isn't too hard, relying on those trusty aerial combos to do the job yet again. We get our first accessory too, Brave Warrior. Accessories basically just give flat boosts to each stat like defense, HP, MP, etc. Once defeated, Donald and Goofy explain that they were looking for Sora, and they want him to come with them on their top secret mission, on one condition.
No frowning, no sad face, okay?
Yeah, you gotta look funny, like us. Whoa.
Yes, but ones on happy faces.
Happy?
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Ah, there's the Oscar-worthy dialogue I remember so fondly. Sora's like, yeah, I'll come along. I can search for Riku and Kairi. Ooh, spooky villains, I wonder who these people are. The silhouettes are making it so tough. And then there's Maleficent, who doesn't even care about hiding her face. She kind of acts like a pseudo-villain in the game. All the other Disney villains come up with these diabolical, evil Disney ways to kill Sora, and she's just like, nah, let's just see how this turns out. Again, it does feel a little bit ham-fisted. Obviously, they need to keep reminding us that this is a Disney crossover game, despite the fact that Donald and Goofy are literally right there. But it's been like 3 hours and we still haven't seen one Disney world. This short scene with each Disney villain acts as a teaser for what's to come, basically. So Leon, tells Sora to prepare for the journey ahead by stocking up on potions, something I totally ignore and will come to regret in approximately 15 minutes. Donald and Goofy then gift us our first spell, Fire, as well as a dodge roll. Finally, the combat's opening up a little bit. This dodge roll isn't this all-powerful tool or anything, but you can dodge most attacks with it. Fire, on the other hand, can literally act as a makeshift ranged weapon in the late game, especially when you get more MP. You can basically spam it and kill many Heartless very quickly. The next unlock is Jiminy Cricket's journal. I totally forgot he was even there. He makes very little impression in this game. In fact, he has maybe 1 or 2 scenes in total. The journal basically chronicles the story so far, as well as allowing you to track how many Dalmatians you've rescued, as well as reading Ansem's reports when you find them. Something I don't think I've ever done. The final unlock is what this game calls a Blue Trinity. Trinities essentially let you unlock new areas and give you items, something the late game exploration heavily relies on. I like it because it encourages you to revisit worlds that you otherwise wouldn't have any reason to go back to. Man, that was a lot of mechanics to throw at you all at once. This game really opens up a bit after Traverse Town, but I forgot just how much the game gives you. And the best bit, it's not even over yet, because as soon as you leave Traverse Town, you unlock the Gummy Ship. But I'm going to wait to talk about that until a bit later on, so sit tight Gummy Ship enjoyers, I haven't forgotten about you. So we get to choose between 2 different worlds that we can visit, but if you pay attention to the battle level on the map menu, hopefully you've chosen to visit Wonderland first. Yes, finally, we're in our first Disney World. Wonderland from, you guessed it, Peter Pan. No, I'm just kidding. Alice in Wonderland. And so begins all the homages to the classic movies. After being rudely pushed aside by the White Rabbit, we enter the strange room. Having to grow and shrink down in order to push this bed out of the way is more of a visual thing than an elaborate puzzle, but it looks really cool, especially with how it plays with your sense of scale. It really makes you feel like you have Alice in Wonderland syndrome. In the Queen's Garden, Alice is on trial. You see, it turns out that someone tried to steal the Queen's heart, literally or figuratively. You know, it's funny because the Queen of Hearts doesn't have a heart, get it? It's quite funny because Goofy mentions that getting involved would be muddling, which is against the rules, as if that isn't what the trio do in literally every single world they visit. So the Queen tells us that we need to find 4 pieces of evidence to prove that Alice is innocent, otherwise she'll present her own evidence to the contrary. So, into the forest we go. I do love the style of this world. One thing you can always praise this game on is the attention to detail for every Disney World. Level design wise, they aren't really anything amazing, more on that later, but each world really captures the feeling of the movie. This forest has a number of plants that we can feed with different items. This one, for instance, asks for a potion so that we can grow in size, similar to the Bazaar Room. This lets us whack the tree to move a platform so that we can enter this hole up here. Unfortunately, I'm a complete dumbass and smacked the tree twice, and I ran out of potions. Guess what that means? Well, it doesn't mean grind these enemies until they drop a potion. Actually, it's faster to fly all the way back to Traverse Town and buy a potion. And therein lies one of my biggest issues with this game. The only place in the entire game where you can purchase potions is in Traverse Town. Would it really be that hard to put a Moogle in each world that you can trade with? It's not that much of a hassle to fly back to Traverse Town later on because you unlock a fast travel warp of sorts. But for these early stages where you can't so easily fly back, it's a massive pain, especially if you need an item to solve a puzzle. It just infuriates me that something like this was so overlooked. So one quick flight back to Traverse Town and back, fighting our way through the forest, we finally collect all of the evidence. Presenting it to the Queen and absolutely smashing this minigame, she still insists that Alice is guilty. We have to fight the cards, and all I can think about is how I can play them in Balatro. And the Queen scrambles because it turns out that Alice has been kidnapped. After all that, it was for nothing. So we fight our way back through the forest and through the Mad Hatter's domain, and we have to light these 2 lamps for some reason, and then face off against the world boss. This guy with his ribbony arms is no pushover. In fact, he can be quite troublesome as he's able to destroy this chair, effectively cutting off your only means of reaching his body. You can spam spells though and attack him as he reaches down to attack you. stunning him and then going in for big damage. And these early bosses are made all the more frustrating because I still have not unlocked the scan ability, which lets you see the enemy's health bar. Even still, beat him first try, didn't I? No sweat. And got a nice health boost to boot. And after all that, it turns out that the keyhole was in the door's keyhole all along. Who would have guessed? And he dropped a Navi G piece to boot. What the hell does that do? The Cheshire Cat tells us that the princess has been taken by the darkness, so we have no choice but to leave this world. Wonderland's very brief, but it's decent enough for the first world. The level design is arguably the most straightforward in the game. It's impossible to get lost, and the environments really emulate the feeling of the original movie. My only wish is that it was a bit longer, but that can be said for a few worlds in this game. Although Wonderland feels especially short, especially after how lengthy Traverse Town is. There also aren't any unique Heartless like other worlds. Like, you do fight the cards, but that's it as far as unique enemies are concerned. That said, Wonderland is definitely wonderful compared to what's next. Now you could go back to Traverse Town, stock up and visit the second of the two worlds that we initially unlocked, but personally I always go to Deep Jungle next. And that's for two reasons. Firstly, the second world, Olympus Colosseum, is a lot easier after leveling up a bit more. And secondly, I hate Deep Jungle. Out of all the worlds in this game, Deep Jungle is by far the worst. You will always hear people complaining about the vine swinging section or the Cletus boss fight. Cletus? You will always hear people complaining about the vine swinging section or the Clayton boss fight, and they are frustrating for sure. But the biggest issue with Deep Jungle is all of the backtracking that you have to do. Seriously, you go up to the treehouse and back down again so many times, and it becomes so tedious, but we'll get there. So it turns out that Sora and Donald had a bit of a falling out because Donald felt like it would be a waste of time to land. But Sora wanted to check anyway, just because Riku and Kairi could be there. Spoiler alert, they aren't. Maybe if Sora listened to Donald, then we wouldn't need to climb the treehouse 50 times. So the team is split up again. And this kind of falling out trope is pretty common for JRPGs, but it happens so soon in this game that it doesn't really have any weight to it. I mean, we only just met Donald an hour ago, and already the two are at odds with each other. It definitely feels a bit forced, but oh well, who needs him? I've teamed up with Tarzan to look for my real friends.
Friends. Here.
This slope sliding minigame is probably the most fun you can have in this world, but you better get used to it because you'll be doing it a lot. We go all the way down and reach this campsite, and we quickly collect all of these slides. And upon entering the tent, we're reunited with Donald and Goofy. That was quick. Obviously, Sora and Donald are still pissed off at each other, so naturally, I decide to pair them up together. We can hand the slides over that we found, and immediately we get this ominous slide of a castle. So in the movie, it's apparently just this random castle, and it could be referencing any number of other Disney movies. But for some reason, Sora finds it familiar here. Could it be foreshadowing? Then we're greeted by this pompous asshole, Clayton, who wants to go with us to see the gorillas, as they might know where Kairi is. So we have to climb up this definitely not video gamey vine, meet this Kerchak, who completely ghosts us and walks off, but we decide to follow anyway, which means we have to swing across these god-awful vines. Now, I don't know who programmed this, but it does not feel good to swing on these vines. You have to press triangle at very specific moments, and Sora will basically magnetize to each one, but sometimes the time is so wrong that you have to manually jump, and when you do that, it's completely out of your hands. Sora could very well just jump in the complete opposite direction, and if you fall, you have to do it all again. It's especially frustrating because you have to do this section about 4 or 5 times. Could they not have given you a shortcut after the first try, so going up to the treehouse wasn't so tedious? It's just padding. It's the PS2 equivalent of that slow crawl through the crack mechanic that every AAA game needs to have these days, except that you can get stuck in the crack and fall through the floor or something. So we follow the monkeys back to the treehouse, and Clayton gets a cheeky shot in. Now the gorillas aren't going to help us at all. They probably have no idea where Riku and Kairi are anyway. So we return to the campsite and Clayton's having a complete mental breakdown. He's so one-dimensional. What is he, a Disney villain? It seems that the Heartless have overrun the place. so we need to visit every region in the world to kill them and save all the gorillas. At least there are some unique Heartless in this world, unlike Wonderland. These cute looking monkey Heartless, for example. I love the design of these guys. You can see me preparing to fight Clayton here, but I'm off by at least 2 more cycles. Yep, that means climbing up the treehouse yet again. Once we've saved all the gorillas, we can go back down again, only for Jane to run away from the campsite and back up the treehouse. Oh, for God's sake, not again. I think I actually called it quits for the day after realising I have to go up again. But after saving Jane up at the treehouse, we're finally ready to face Clayton. So yeah, Clayton's the first boss in the game that I would say is actually hard. At this point, especially if you haven't been to the Colosseum just yet, he will absolutely thrash you. You basically have to keep the pressure up in his first phase and keep pummeling him, not letting him get any shots in because he can kill you in 2 or 3 hits. It's not too tough, but it's the second phase that really gets under my skin. He mounts this invisible chameleon thing who moves incredibly quickly. If you damage him enough, he will eject Clayton off his back and eventually will become visible. Once they're apart, however, you have to contend with the both of them. And the camera. Yeah, I've neglected to talk about the camera up till now, because I seem to have less problems than others, but honestly it can be quite frustrating to manage at times, regardless of whether or not you put it on manual or auto. It's particularly egregious in this boss fight. If you focus on the chameleon, Clayton can heal himself and also shoot you from afar, but if you focus on Clayton, the chameleon can close in on you and hit like a truck. This is harder than Ornstein and Smell. Much like a lot of bosses in this game, patience is key. If you focus on Clayton and get lucky enough, you can kill him before the chameleon kills Donald and Goofy, and with any luck it will be aggroed on them instead. It's really tough, really difficult, and compared to literally every boss in this game so far, it's such a harsh difficulty spike, I wouldn't be surprised if most people just gave up here. I defeated him after about 8 attempts, I mean first try obviously, but I just barely managed to get him before he would have shot and killed me. Anyway, with him defeated, we finally unlock Cure, meaning we no longer have to rely on potions to carry us through each battle. This is also incredibly useful for the next world we'll be visiting. We climb up a waterfall and find out that the weird thing Tarzan has been saying is actually heart. Sora and Donald set aside their differences, and through the power of friendship, the keyhole's revealed. We also get another navigation gummy, the Red Trinity, and our first keychain. That's right, you didn't think that we would use the same Keyblade throughout the entire game, did you? Each keychain gives our Keyblade a new coat of paint, as well as a couple of stat boosts, mainly overall damage, and some even give us more MP. But with that, Deep Jungle is finally done. Ooh, that is the most negative I'm going to be all video, trust me. As I've said, Deep Jungle is the absolute low point of the entire game for me, and the quality of the worlds increases dramatically from here onwards. So with our new Navi G gummy in hand, we need to go back to Traverse Town to ask Leon if he knows what their use is. But since it's on the way, we make a stop at that one world we haven't been to yet. Essentially this game's arena level. We'll be coming back here fairly often as the game progresses, but for now we can explore the courtyard and open the few chests around here before entering the Colosseum. We meet Phil, who tells us to move that giant brick. Of course it's too heavy. Who do you think Sora is? Well, certainly not a hero. We need to help him prepare for the games by destroying barrels. What are we, on cleanup duty? Anyway, it's fairly easy since I have Ripple Drive equipped. Essentially an upgraded version of Stun Impact, except damage is based on how much MP I have. It does AoE damage, so it can destroy pretty much every barrel with no problem. It also activates at the end of every combo now, unlike Stun Impact, which only has a small chance of activating. So after destroying all the barrels and hearing Phil insult us yet again...
2 words! You guys ain't heroes!
Come on!
He basically tells us, no, you can't enter the games. He does give us Thunder though, which isn't all bad. Seriously dude, after all that help, you're just going to tell us to piss off. Thankfully we run into this really nice, definitely not evil guy, who conveniently gives us a pass to the games. It's time to show Phil how much of a hero I really am. These tournaments, or cups as the game calls them, are really fun. You basically just fight through waves of enemies that you've encountered in every world. How does Phil get the Heartless into the Colosseum? Shh, don't question his methods. So after fighting through a few waves, it turns out that the blue fiery guy is actually evil, and wait, Is that Cloud Strife from the hit game Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis for the mobile phone? Why is he working with Hades? No wait, why does he look like that? Yeah, there's something about Cloud in this game, in a lot of Final Fantasy VII products actually, around the early to mid 2000s where Tetsuya Nomura just wanted him to be as edgy as humanly possible. Like yeah, he is serious in Final Fantasy VII, but if you've played it you would know that he's actually kind of a goofball. There's that underlying charm to him and it's just completely missing here. To be fair, he does look pretty cool, but seriously, he looks like he's just got done listening to an entire Deftones album and now he thinks he's the coolest badass in the universe. He has bandages around his Buster Sword for Christ's sakes. I'm sure they have some kind of purpose, but he just keeps spamming the same attack over and over. Kind of like Sora actually. Yeah, this is another battle where it doesn't matter if you win or lose. I would have gotten him if I actually knew how much health he had left. I still don't have scan. But after making quick work of me and striking his coolest pose, this three-headed dog comes out of nowhere and we just run off after Hercules holds him back. His heroics don't last long though because Hercules conveniently decides to leave this 14-year-old kid to battle this demon dog from hell. This boss isn't that difficult though, especially now that I have Cure. See why I did Deep Jungle before this? You literally just need to spam aerial combos yet again for an easy win. And what's that? Scan! I got Scan! Yeah, so it turns out that Scan doesn't unlock until level 15 with the staff, as opposed to 9 with the sword. But actually, if you choose the shield at the start, you don't get it until level 21, so 15 isn't all that bad. But now we can see enemies' health bars at the cost of just 1 AP, and it's basically essential, so it's completely worth that. Anyway, Phil promotes us to junior heroes and tells us that there aren't going to be any more games for a while, so I suppose we just have to come back later on. Before leaving though, we get to have a good chat with Emo Cloud, who tells us that he's looking for someone, and Hades promised he'd help. Come on man, you're smarter than that. Actually, that's debatable. He gives us a new ability, our first triangle attack. I think they're called limits in this game. They give us combo extenders or finishers at the cost of some MP. It's like a rudimentary version of the same concept from Kingdom Hearts 2, and some of them are incredibly overpowered, but we'll get to that later on. Alright, I think it's finally time to talk about the gummy ship. Now, I'm pretty sure that most people really dislike the gummy ship, but personally I never hated it that much. In concept, it was actually pretty unique for the time. I mean, Kingdom Hearts has a lot of gimmicks like this, and while it technically just acts as a minigame of sorts, physically flying from one world to the other has such a sense of adventure to it. Unfortunately, in execution it isn't always very exciting. I mean, graphically it looks like Sora and co just slipped into the Bubsy 3D dimension. Everything's so blocky and rough looking. Hell, Star Fox 64 looks better than this, and it's a whole console generation behind it. That said, building your gummy ship, while convoluted and pretty difficult to control, is quite fun. You can honestly breeze through the game without ever changing your ship, but the base ship travels so slowly that you're going to want to. You can unlock blueprints by destroying enemy ships and also after finding Geppetto, but there's more on that later. And you can equip your gummy ship with more powerful weapons and a radar to make it a bit easier, which is what I did after copy-pasting an enemy ship blueprint, which carried me through the entirety of the rest of the game. It wasn't the fastest ship that I could build, but it did the job. But yeah, it really doesn't pose much of a challenge, and although again it provides a sense of adventure, it does get quite repetitive, and it really feels half-baked. The galaxy map is ever evolving too, although it isn't very interactive outside of choosing which world you want to go to. Later on in the game there are wormholes that open up to connect earlier planets to late game ones, but by that point you can literally just fast travel back to worlds you've already been to, avoiding this mechanic entirely. So we're back in Traverse Town and we actually have quite a lot to do. First things first, we have to find Leon. We can use our newly acquired Red Trinity to blast down this gate to the underground waterway, where Leon is swinging his sword at nothing and Aerith is staring into space. Leon tells us that we need to seal all of the keyholes before the darkness swallows them whole. He mentions that there's a keyhole in Traverse Town somewhere, so we need to find and close it. Finally, Aerith tells us that we should take those navigation gummies to Sid, as he'll know what to do with them. Before we go to Sid though, we can open this door in the 3rd district by casting fire on it. We enter this mysterious house on the lake and Sora has some hallucination of Kairi, the first of many. I can't believe this 14-year-old is already losing his mind. Anyway, it seems we're trespassing as this wizard guy comes in and decorates the house from a bag. That's super cool. I wish it didn't cut away because seeing all the furniture go into place around you would have been awesome. But I think it's mainly down to console restraints. Through Merlin we can practice our magic skills, and through the Fairy Godmother we can unlock various summons throughout the game after we've collected summon materia. So we are going to want to come back here fairly often. There isn't a whole lot we can do here for now though, so we should exit back out to the 3rd district, and after taking care of the Heartless here, use Thunder on this broken pipe, which is totally safe, and unlock the shortcut to the 1st district. I've always loved how Traverse Town loops around on itself like this. Now we can finally talk to Sid, who explains that we need to deliver an old book to this abandoned house in the 3rd district. Wait a minute, didn't we just go there? Yeah, so I did this slightly out of order, but the result's the same. Handing the book over to Merlin, we've unlocked a completely new world, the 100 Acre Wood. This is a completely optional and totally missable world, which is only accessible from that book. You have to collect torn pages throughout the game and return them to the book. It's essentially just a collection of really frustrating minigames. And outside of the calming presentation, there isn't much to it. Fun fact, I've been to the real life 100 Acre Woods a couple of times as a kid, and I can vouch for how calm and beautiful it really is. There aren't any talking yellow bears though, and I don't remember it being quite so sunny. I didn't engage much with the 100 Acre Wood. I did do it as a kid, but the minigames really aren't that fun, so going out of my way to collect all the torn pages never feels worthwhile. It's nice to just exist in this area though. It has a storybook quality to it, visually, and there aren't any Heartless either. It's just a really nice vibe. Back in the real world, Riku shows up out of nowhere. Sora's very happy that he's finally found Riku, but both are a bit disappointed that Kairi isn't with either of them. It just seems that Riku's a bit jealous of Sora for having that Keyblade. Riku then uses his Vanish Jutsu, but Sora doesn't seem to care that his friend, who he's literally been looking for the entire game, has just disappeared again. Oh well, I guess we should go meet up with Sid in the house up the road. He tells us about Maleficent and how she's the reason why the Heartless are scattered about all of the worlds. He also reminds us about Ansem's report and how Maleficent likely has some pages. Maleficent's just casually watching us through the window though, and she tells Riku that he's been replaced with new friends. It kind of reminds you that these characters are just kids at the end of the day. The jealousy Riku feels from being replaced has really hurt his pride. Now we can look for the keyhole in Traverse Town. Remember that exposed cable we blasted with lightning? Well, it turns out that it's powered on the clock tower, so we can reach some chests that were inaccessible before. Also, the ladder outside of the clock tower has been fixed. Using our red trinity to blast away the gate, we can ring the bell. We have to ring it 3 times, as indicated by the 3 bells on these pillars. This is probably the most convoluted puzzle in the entire game, by the way. And wouldn't you know, there's the keyhole. Of course, we can't just close it, we have to defeat another armoured Heartless, but this time it switches its arms for legs, and wow, that's one of the coolest gimmicks for a recycled boss fight that I've seen so far. It isn't that much harder than before though, so we can take it down quite quickly, levelling up once again. And that's another thing that I really like about this game, by the way. It's balanced in a way that most bosses give you just enough XP to level up, really reducing the amount of grinding necessary to beat the game. As long as you do the Colosseum cups as they unlock and you don't just run past every Heartless in the game, you should be the correct level for each boss. That said, it's not like there aren't any crazy difficulty spikes. I'll never forget Clayton. Getting back on track, we are able to seal the keyhole in Traverse Town. And after talking to Sid about installing the Navi Gummy, he tells us that we can go to him for gummy ship upgrades. This is a cool little nod to Final Fantasy VII, where he's a pilot by trade, so of course he's able to upgrade rocket ships. It's the same science, right? Before we depart, we go back to the accessory shop where we run into a familiar face, Pinocchio. He tells us that Geppetto's gone missing, so we need to go and find him. And with that, we've unlocked the next set of worlds. But first, there's a new tournament at the Colosseum, so we have to make a quick detour. The final boss of this specific cup is a repeat of the armor that we just fought. I did say that you should get used to recycled bosses. People think Elden Ring's bad. But completing this cup gives us the gravity spell, which flattens enemies and will come in handy for a certain late game boss. I already mentioned the warp holes earlier, and we have to go through one of them in order to access the next set of Disney worlds. The way that the space changes colour as you fly through to indicate an increase in difficulty is a nice touch, but the gummy sections still don't pose that much of a challenge. Jafar and Maleficent are scheming. They've lost track of Jasmine, this world's Disney princess, except she's right behind them. Can't they use their Disney magic to literally sense that she's there? I guess Maleficent isn't as all-powerful as I thought. We're dropped right into Agrabah with this funky music and goddamn, attacked by Heartless immediately. Agrabah's definitely one of the best levels in the game, possibly the best Disney world in the game. The amount of unique enemies is really impressive, and honestly all of the worlds from here onwards just ooze style. The city of Agrabah itself is quite small and cramped, which really emulates the feeling of the original movie. All of the alleyways and rooftops that you can jump across to reach hidden treasures, it's perfect. And this is only the first part of the world as well. Going down a side path, we run into Jasmine, who explains that Jafar has taken control of the city in hopes of finding the keyhole. Well, she didn't do a great job hiding because Jafar menacingly looms over them from a rooftop above. He summons some Heartless that don't pose much of a threat. They're generally just reskins of the Night Heartless from Traverse Town, but the fact that they're visually different just adds a bit of flavour, you know? Anyway, we have to find a way to get to Aladdin's house, which involves flipping a couple of switches and jumping across the rooftops. Once we get there, we free the magic carpet and chase it out to the desert. It takes us further out, so far out that it's nighttime by the time we arrive, and Aladdin is being dragged under by quicksand. Facing wave after wave of Heartless, we rescue Aladdin and meet the genie, which definitely isn't Robin Williams.
Arr! Wish number one coming right up!
Honestly, the Disney voices are kind of hit or miss. Like, they got the original actors for a bunch of characters, but some are obviously different voice actors who are just trying their best to emulate the original actors, and Genie is one of the worst examples. They got Dan Castellaneta, yes, that Dan Castellaneta, Homer Simpson, and no joke, Genie just sounds like Homer in this game. Was Robin Williams really that expensive, or did he have some scheduling issues? It's known that he was an avid gamer, so I figured that he would jump at the chance to reprise his role as the Genie, but who knows. It's just a small blemish on an otherwise phenomenal world. After we rescue the two of them, Aladdin tells Genie that once they rescue Jasmine, he will free the Genie with his final wish. This is Kingdom Hearts at its best. It's a classic example of how it very loosely adapts the original movies and then puts its own spin on it, so as not to be a total copy. Unfortunately, some of the later games just go for straight adaptations, but in my opinion the franchise works best when it has a bit of fun telling unique stories within the same universes without losing sight of what made the original movies so good. So we're back in the city and we need to get to the castle gates. I did get a bit lost here, but it's by no means as convoluted as Deep Jungle. We essentially just need to jump across the rooftops again to find an opening rather than walking straight through. Unfortunately, Jafar steals the lamp and Homer pieces out. Then we get a mini-boss, this pot centipede thing. And it's very easy. The pots have basically no health, so they're more than a nuisance rather than a big threat. What's very cool about this boss is that it opens up the entire city as one continuous area, as opposed to segmenting it off behind different loading screens. I assume that because they don't need to load in the enemies, they can just open it up like this. After taking it down, we get a new accessory and race off to the desert and back to the Cave of Wonders where we fight another boss. Damn, this level really is just banger after banger. We have to defeat the cave itself, which is such a cool concept. For this boss, it's a game of patience. We just have to wait for him to slam his face into the ground and then jump up onto his nose and slash at his eyes. He periodically spits out smaller Heartless too. It's simply a visually cool boss that isn't difficult at all. And once we've defeated him, we can enter its mouth, unlocking the second main area of this world. The Cave of Wonders is comprised of a few small rooms which have giant pits you can fall down. In fact, you need to do so in order to destroy this pillar, opening the path to the boss room. It looks a bit complicated, but it's actually not hard at all. The treasure room itself just looks awesome, with all of this gold stacked up with chests above them. It's such a cool room. I wish more games had treasure rooms like this. Anyway, we run into this boss room and Sora sees Maleficent for the first time, but she nopes out of there. They speak ominously about how Jasmine is one of the 7 princesses that will open the door. This door sounds pretty important. Facing off against Jafar is a little frustrating. He doesn't have much health or deal much damage at all, but he teleports around quite quickly, so you don't have many openings to attack him. I summoned Simba here, but it ended up being a complete waste as Jafar was too high for him to hit. I get the impression that they didn't know what to do with him here, so they just made him start teleporting around in order to artificially lengthen the boss fight, but it just makes it annoying more than anything else. After defeating him, we get a nice upgrade to our Blizzard spell, and thankfully that isn't the end of the battle, as Jafar wishes to be made into an all-powerful genie opening up an entire room below the boss room. Now, for as menacing as Jafar looks now, it isn't actually him that we have to fight. No, instead we just smack his pet bird around for a little bit. It's a very underwhelming final boss to an otherwise stellar world. We obtain a fire upgrade, and the first of Ansem's reports, but what's this? Jasmine gets kidnapped just like Alice before her. Sora doesn't seem to care though, and seals the keyhole, which brings this entire Cave of Wonders down. Now we get one of the coolest sections in the entire game, escaping on the magic carpet. No, it isn't tough, but I said earlier and I'll say it again. I love minigames like this. It's actually quite an impressive set piece for 2002 standards. Back in Aladdin's house they talk about how Jasmine has been kidnapped, but Aladdin's upset that he's unable to leave his world. That said, despite being all depressed, he upholds his end of the bargain, freeing Genie from his lamp, and for some reason Genie is allowed to come with us. I don't exactly understand why he can come and Aladdin can't, but I suppose Genie makes for a better summon, so. It turns out that Riku is the one that kidnapped Jasmine, and we can assume that he kidnapped the other princesses too. Maleficent tells him that if he keeps helping them out, she'll find Kairi for him. She's being quite manipulative, telling Riku that he's like a son to her and whatnot. It's quite sad how Riku's being completely taken advantage of here. I take a quick detour back to Traverse Town to use our newly acquired Green Trinity to open up the Moogle accessory shop. This lets us use materials that we've gathered to craft new accessories and eventually the ultimate weapon. Unfortunately, item synthesis, as it's called, is quite convoluted and requires a lot of grinding, so I didn't bother much with it. In order to craft the ultimate weapon, you have to synthesize every single item, which takes hours upon hours, and it just isn't worth it in my opinion. It's time to go to the next world, not far from Agrabah. We fire up the gummy ship and get moving, but wait, what's this? A flying whale. It eats our ship and we get another flashback. This time it cuts back to Sora and Riku as kids. They're talking about how there's a monster in the cave, so naturally, like a couple of smart kids, they go into the cave to fight it. Turns out it was just the wind, too bad. But they do notice the door and wonder what it could possibly be. This is when the pair first get the idea to leave Destiny Islands and discover other worlds.
Come on, everybody, after him, quick!
Alright, so MONSTRO. This level's fairly infamous for being quite convoluted, but, well, I'll get there, but let me say I kind of surprised myself with this shortcut that I found. First of all though, we need to follow Pinocchio, who somehow ended up inside of MONSTRO despite being in Traverse Town about an hour ago. Anyway, we find Geppetto, who tells us that he's been looking all over for Pinocchio, but was swallowed by MONSTRO. Pinocchio spots Riku and feels like following him, so we have to go after him too, and then we run into Riku yet again. Only this time he's not so friendly with Sora, and so begins another cat and mouse chase. Although unlike Traverse Town, this world is far more confusing. Unfortunately, every single room looks exactly the same, with this ugly texture acting as the inner walls of MONSTRO. Personally, I kind of wish it was a bit grosser, like, does anyone remember in Ocarina of Time, when you have to go inside Lord Jabu Jabu? It looked like you were inside a living being. I mean, it was disgusting, but it at least had a bit of style to it. It was likely a creative decision to not have MONSTRO look like that, but the textures here are so strange, and it all just melds together. All you really need to know to traverse this world is that the correct doors are green, whereas the wrong doors are blue. The game doesn't explain this, of course, because then it would make too much sense. The Heartless are quite lazy here too. I mean, we did go to MONSTRO first, but the enemies here are a mix of what we've seen before, and Atlantica's Ghost Heartless. Again, knowing how to navigate the world makes it a lot easier, so you can get through it in a few minutes. Catching up with Riku, Maleficent appears out of nowhere again and asks him why he still cares about Sora, which obviously irks him. Once Sora and co catch up, Riku's spite drives the two of them further apart. This is about when Riku goes too far in my opinion, because he obviously is the one that trapped poor Pinocchio inside that Heartless. But we do get to team up with him to take it down. He's pretty useless though, opting to just stand there and let Sora take all the damage. This isn't exactly a boss fight, but upon defeat, we level up and get access to the Air Combo Plus ability, effectively prolonging our aerial combo spamming, which is successful every time. Seriously though, extending our combo even by one more attack spices up the combat ever so slightly. Pinocchio gets yeeted down this dark hole, and Riku runs after him straight away, with us not far behind. We return to Geppetto, and the water lowers ever so slightly for some reason, revealing more collectibles. But what's more important is, yeah, this Riku guy is too far gone now. Stealing a puppet? What exactly is it that he wants from Pinocchio of all people? We also unlock the high jump ability, one of a few shared abilities which essentially just give us more traversal options. And look at that, Sora's dodgy jump skills are no more. Seriously though, I think I may have broken the game here. I used the high jump to get to this platform here, which let me completely skip having to go through the maze again. I don't know if this is intended or not. I definitely remember it being way more convoluted than simply going through this door to skip straight to the boss, but I got there anyway. Riku asks Sora to team up with him to find Kairi, but Sora isn't having it. This is the proper boss of the world. It's a repeat of the Heartless we just fought, though he has 3 times as much health and is far more aggressive. The trick is to whack his head until his stomach-mouth thing opens, which we can strike away for even more damage. Is it a tough boss? Not at all. In fact, this is one of the easier bosses in the game. It shoots poison from its mouth at times, but constantly drops MP bubbles when hit, so you can basically just tank hits and then run away to cast Cure when needed. Killing this Heartless rewards us with the time spell, letting us temporarily freeze enemies for like 2 seconds. Riku's on some sort of ship, and he's finally reunited with Kairi, although something obviously isn't quite right with her. It turns out that she's completely lifeless. Taken by Heartless? Surely not. Maleficent tricks Riku by telling him that gathering the 7 princesses will allow them to open the door. Where does this door lead? We're getting there, trust me. She gives Riku this ultimate power. Great, that totally won't give him any false sense of self-worth. We can head back to Traverse Town once again to find Geppetto and Pinocchio in a newly built house. Talking to Geppetto periodically will give you different gummy ship blueprints, which is pretty cool, especially if you don't want to build any ships yourself. The second tournament is also available in the Colosseum, so we make a quick stop there to take care of that. This second bout ends with one of my favourite boss fights in the game. We face off against Leon and Yuffie at the same time. Leon has the same moveset as earlier on in the game, except that he can enchant his sword now, which gives it even greater range and does quite a substantial amount of damage. His updated attack combos paired with Yuffie, who's able to throw her trusty shuriken at you, and to top it off can heal too, so you need to keep the pressure up and take her down first. This is one of my favourite examples of a duo boss done right. Parrying Yuffie's shuriken is really satisfying. Oh, I haven't even talked about tech points yet. Basically, countering attacks in this game, or exploiting certain Heartless's weaknesses, grants tech points, essentially just more XP. Garden is pretty much essential for some of the late game bosses, and it's the most effective way to build up tech points during battle. Unfortunately, because I chose the staff, we won't be unlocking Guard for quite some time. You can counter certain moves by attacking at the right time though, sort of like a parry, so that's what I've been relying on for some of these more challenging bosses. Timing is very precise though, so I fail a lot as you can clearly see. Completing this cup grants us the most overpowered limit in the game, Strike Raid. You can cheese a lot of enemies with this attack. For the cost of just 2 MP, Sora throws his Keyblade like a Beyblade, not once but 5 times in a row, and to top it off, during the animation Sora has complete invincibility. So by using Strike Raid at the right time we can block some of the more egregious AoE attacks, 2 in particular which we'll talk more about later. Next up we have another infamous level. But hot take of the day, I actually really love Atlantica. Sacrilege, I know. Swimming around is nowhere near as bad as people make it out to be. You swim up with circle and down with square, and it's actually quite smooth, and the starting area literally forces you to follow Flounder around, and it really helps you to get to grips with the controls. Shortly after, you're attacked by some Heartless, and there's another thing I adore about Atlantica. Most of the Heartless are completely exclusive to this world. It has so much personality. Also, just look at Donald and Goofy. Unfortunately, you are limited to a simple 3-hit combo when underwater, which isn't great, and how the hell is Sora using fire as well? You know what, it's best not to question these things. We have to follow the tridents on the wall to Triton's palace, where he scolds Ariel for leaving the palace when the seas are so full of danger. He gets upset at Goofy of all people for even mentioning that they're looking for the keyhole and banishes us from the palace.
Perhaps I'm being too strict.
You think? We meet up with Ariel in her grotto, which is full of treasures, and she tells us how her father treats her like a little girl and she's sick of it. The story in this world doesn't stick too close to The Little Mermaid, Ariel doesn't leave the ocean or anything, but some of the general themes are there as far as the coming-of-age tale is concerned. We need to find a trinket for her, so we hitch a ride on a nearby dolphin to ride against the current and come across a sunken ship. Inside, conveniently, is the exact thing we need. You can go through a small passage and unlock a shortcut back to Ariel's grotto. You remember earlier when I mentioned that Deep Jungle needed some sort of shortcut to connect the treehouse to the campsite? Well, this is what I'm talking about. It shows that the devs are capable of good level design when they want to do it. I love it when games do that, and I wish that Kingdom Hearts did it more. Anyway, we return to the grotto and place the trident in the socket, but then...
Daddy, no! How could you?
Well, that was rude. Ariel swims off, and Triton tells us to leave the ocean. He obviously knows more than he's letting on. Cue the classic Disney villain manipulation tactic. We are introduced to Ursula, who goads Ariel into stealing the trident from her father in order to leave the ocean, something that Ariel really wants to do. So we head back to the palace where Ariel, tricked by Ursula, does just that. Now it's our job to go and defeat Ursula. Isn't that muddling anyway? Okay, sorry. We need to backtrack to the sunken ship, but if you remember, we unlocked a shortcut, so it isn't a hassle to get back there. Flipping a switch with the help of Bastion, we can enter the Den of Tides. This is a pretty linear section, which leads directly into the first boss of the world. We have to defeat Ursula and her eel friends. In order to damage her, you have to spam magic on the cauldron in the middle, which causes her to go dizzy. It's one of those boss fights which isn't particularly hard, but takes a while to do because she has a lot of health and recovers from the daze quite quickly. Furthermore, if you run out of MP, it can be quite frustrating because without any ethers, you essentially have to build it back up by whacking the eels. And they don't have much health, so it just takes quite a while. But once she's taken care of, she escapes to the wide ocean, and we unlock an Atlantis exclusive shared ability, the Mermaid Kick. This lets us swim faster, and more importantly, allows us to swim through currents without the need to rely on our dolphin friends. So with this newfound ability, we can push through and hunt down Ursula one final time. She uses the trident to grow to a frankly horrifying size, initiating the world's main boss battle. I'd argue that this boss acts as the first of many of these flying boss fights that you come up against in the back half of the game. Despite the fact that you're swimming here, it acts as mostly the same as Free Flight, but more on that later. Ursula's quite an easy battle, especially if you use the Mermaid Kick to avoid some of her more targeted attacks. In fact, you need to use it to swim away from this specific attack, where she sucks in all of this water and chomps down on you. That said, as long as you have a decent amount of MP, I had 6 at this point, you can mainly just tank all of her attacks and then heal when needed, and then keep bopping her on the head until she goes down. So we reclaim the trident and return to the king, who essentially says all is forgiven, explaining that it's his fault all along for being too possessive of Ariel. We get another thunder upgrade, and he tells us where the keyhole is. Yep, you guessed it, it's in Ariel's grotto, behind the special trinket that we collected. Turns out that Triton did indeed know more than he was letting on. We seal the keyhole and Ariel expresses her desire to leave the ocean one day, potentially foreshadowing future games. After that, we get the Crabclaw Keyblade, boosting our total MP up to a clean 8, and finish up the most underrated Disney World in the game. We only have a couple of Disney Worlds left, and we can head straight to the final one if we want to, but I decided to backtrack and visit Halloween Town first. You'll see why in a bit, but for now though, can we just appreciate how cool it is that The Nightmare Before Christmas is in this game? It isn't the sort of movie that you would traditionally associate with Disney, but it is one of their IPs, and it makes for such a change of pace in comparison to non-stop traditional Disney worlds. To be fair, it is just the Halloween Town portion of the movie. They leave Christmas Town for Kingdom Hearts 2, but the presentation here is absolutely top-notch, and I'm not just talking about Sora and the gang's stellar costumes. There's a subtle sharpening filter that's been applied to the game, which does its best to emulate the stop-motion look of the movie. Obviously, it isn't quite the same, but it's just another example of how much the game's art department really cared about these movies. Even the Heartless, which mostly are the same as previous worlds, they all have unique visual designs exclusive to this one. The setup in Halloween Town is simple enough. It's almost Halloween and Jack Skellington wants to make it the best one yet, surprise surprise, and he's asked for Dr. Finkelstein's help in figuring out how to make the Heartless even scarier. There's this cool moment as we enter Halloween Town where all of the Heartless are completely docile. You can't even attack them, but they don't go after you either. Jack is some sort of mastermind who's cracked the code, it seems. The Doctor wants to give the Heartless a heart, so he asks us to go and find the ingredients to make one. And so we commence yet another fetch quest. This one quickly goes awry though. By the way, I've been keeping both Donald and Goofy in my party for the majority of the worlds, just because you can only activate Trinities when they're both in the party, which is a bit of a frustrating design feature, because there are some worlds like Agrabah which also require that world's specific party member for certain interactables. It's another case of that artificial game lengthening, especially if you want to 100% the game. Anyway, how can I refuse Jack Skellington in my party? Back to the Halloween Town story. The Heartless start attacking all of the villagers. Guess Skelly Boy didn't do as good a job controlling them as I thought. Anyway, after dealing with the Heartless in the town square, we enter the graveyard and find Sally, who we need to give us her memory, which turns out to be this wilted flower, the Forget-Me-Not. She seems to be unsure about this plan. Finally, someone here who isn't a total moron. It turns out that Lock, Shock and Barrel were eavesdropping on us, and they report our plan to the villain of this world, Oogie Boogie. I just want to note that a lot of the cast from the movie reprised their role for this game, including Chris Sarandon for Jack, and Ken Page for Oogie Boogie. They sound very authentic and they do a fantastic job with the script.
That bonehead Jack is really making a heart. I'll be jiggered. That works for me.
So anyway, we need to go back through the graveyard in order to find the mayor and collect the final heart ingredient, the surprise. We need to whack these tombstones in order, which gives us the Jack in the Box. Returning to the Doctor, and Lock, Shock and Barrel trip him up, which is genuinely funny. Anyway, they run off with the heart, so we need to go after them. One more trip through the graveyard and over that iconic spiral hill, we made it to the main area of the world, Oogie's Manor. We have to climb to the top of the manor, fighting through waves of Heartless as we go. Once we get to the top, we face off against the trio of troublemakers. And, I'm not sure how I feel about fighting these kids, but I guess I have no choice. One embarrassing death later, and the trio claim that Oogie Boogie ordered them to steal the heart, so it wasn't entirely their fault. After whacking this lever, we can jump all the way to the bottom of the manor and enter Boogie's lair, where we face off against the man himself. In concept, this is a really cool boss fight. Oogie throws dice which have a number of different outcomes depending on what they roll on, such as spawning Heartless or generating a healing barrier, where he recovers some health. That said, the boss fight isn't that tough. You have to step on these buttons to trap yourself in the same area as the roulette wheel, which raises the platform and lets you attack Oogie. Naturally, Jack and Donald have minds of their own, so they don't follow me into each platform. Defeat an Oogie Boogie though, and we finally unlock the Guard ability. Guard is an interesting one because it doesn't work exactly as you'd think it does. You can't simply hold square and block all enemy attacks. Instead it works much more like a parry, which you have to time correctly in order for it to work. It's a risk-reward mechanic because Sora becomes completely stationary and has no iframes, so if you miss the timing you'll be punished quite severely. Personally, I like it though. Yes, it can be frustrating, but being able to block 100% of the enemy's attacks would be overkill. Also, it's incredibly satisfying to pull it off, like all good parry mechanics are. Now that Oogie Boogie has been defeated, he melts into a visual cacophony of bugs, just like in the movie. But just as we leave his manor, it sprouts hands and a face. Yep, giant Oogie Boogie. I really don't know what the game's obsession with making its bosses giant is, but it does look cool, I'll give it that. This boss is a bit different to the rest though, as it acts like a giant platforming challenge. Great. Where we have to jump around Oogie's body and destroy these cysts of darkness. That sounds like it could be a grindcore band. You can't really tell how many are left. Some of these purple blobs can be quite difficult to find, so expect to run around for a while looking for the last one if you haven't already been killed by the many Heartless that also spawn. I honestly think it's a bit of a baffling decision, but this world is incredibly short as it is, so they likely wanted to throw something else in there just to, say it with me, artificially lengthen the game time. Funnily enough, I leveled up twice after defeating this boss, a healthy dose of XP just for popping some zits. Hidden beneath Oogie's Manor was the keyhole, honestly an absolutely enormous one. We get another gravity upgrade, which once again will be useful on a later boss. And back at the lab, Jack looks sad that his Halloween plans are in shambles. He gives us a key charm and sends us on our way. Interestingly, the Doctor's experiment simply didn't work. Were his ingredients to make a heart wrong, or can you simply not give a heartless a heart? Honestly, it's a cool way to tie this world's story in with the game's overall narrative, but that's Halloween Town completed, and with that we move on to our final Disney world. Is it really fair to call this world Neverland when we literally just spend the entire level on Captain Hook's ship? It's honestly quite disappointing that we don't get to see Neverland in any capacity here, but Neverland really just acts as a segue into the second half of this game's narrative, which really starts to ramp up here. On approach, we're rammed by the ship and get split up from Donald and Goofy. As soon as we land on the ship, however, we're greeted by our old friend Riku. Feels like it's been a while since we last saw him though. He tells Sora that he found Kairi. Really, it was Maleficent who did that. While we were, quote, goofing around. Hold on, mate, who was it that stole a puppet and went gallivanting around inside a whale's stomach? Anyway, Sora's reunion with this lifeless Kairi is cut short, and he asks Riku why he's siding with the Heartless.
The Heartless obey me now, Sora. Now I have nothing to fear.
You're stupid!
I love Haley Joel Osment's delivery here. He's really echoing what we're all thinking about Riku right now. Just being so blunt and calling him stupid is therapeutic in a way. Riku has other plans though, and showcases his new Heartless controlling power by creating a shadowy copy of Sora before yeeting him below the deck. He's getting a bit cocky, ordering Hook around, but it's quite funny since Hook is every bit the pushover he was in the movie. Below deck, Sora and his real friends devise a plan to rescue Kairi. And then Peter Pan conveniently arrives out of nowhere, teaming up with Sora to find and rescue Wendy, who's also been kidnapped by Hook. Goofy asks how Pan can fly, and he gets Tinkerbell to shower our trusty protagonist with some of Tinkerbell's fairy dust, informing us that we can now fly as long as we believe. The level design on Hook's ship, I refuse to call it Neverland, is really not interesting at all, and it's really just very small with a few samey rooms. I briefly mentioned the camera earlier, but man, it just doesn't work here. These environments are more enclosed than the streets of Agrabah, and it's impossible to see what you're doing, which has made all the more frustrating with the Heartless everywhere. Thankfully, it doesn't last too long, and Riku and Hook are discussing Maleficent's plan to capture all of the princesses up in Hook's quarters. Riku says he doesn't care what Maleficent does with the princesses as long as it restores Kairi's heart. Back with Sora and co, they find Wendy in the room above them, and Kairi's there too. She responds ever so slightly to Sora's call, showing that there is a bit of her soul still lingering within that broken shell of hers. We battle our way up to the bows of the ship, making it to Hook's quarters where Riku leaves with Kairi. I guess we were too late again, but now we have to battle ourselves. Shadow Sora has a relatively basic version of Sora's moveset, without any of the abilities that we have unlocked throughout the entire game. Honestly, it's not particularly great as far as fighting your clone in a video game is concerned. He's able to split into multiple Naruto-style copies, and in my battle with him, he kept doing this attack where he comes up for a hit and then shrinks back into the floor, and he did this for about 5 minutes. I thought my copy of the game was broken or something. I did defeat him eventually though, and we were able to move on with the final section of this brief world. We're confronted by Hook, who orders us to walk the plank, so Sora does just that and then jumps off like an idiot. Oh, never mind. He can fly now because he believes in it. We get a cure upgrade, finally, and now we can fly. As I said during the Ursula battle, free flight works exactly the same as swimming, with circle gain in height and square making you dive. It's a bit more floaty than swimming though, as it should be, and it feels quite good. We have to defeat waves of Heartless with this new ability, and then we get to face off against Hook himself. As I already said though, he's a complete pushover like in the movie, and the same can be said for the boss fight. He doesn't really pose any challenge at all. You're free to wail on him. The only thing you need to worry about is the respawning Heartless pirate ships, which can deal some major damage. Honestly though, since we just had that battle with Shadow Sora, I can forgive this boss for being more of a comedic cakewalk. Hook flinches when you hit him and it's all really animated, but yeah, it's not that tough. So Hook is defeated and we've saved Wendy. Unfortunately, as Hook told us, Riku made off with Kairi and went to a place called Hollow Bastion. Before we can go after him though, we still need to seal this world's keyhole. And it turns out that it resides within Big Ben. Yes, London's Big Ben. I know Peter Pan is set partially in London, but it's quite funny after going to all of these fantastical lands that we end up in London above Westminster. It is quite an impressive showing though, as Big Ben is huge in this game, and visually it's quite impressive for 2002. London itself is rendered out quite far, though it probably isn't an accurate representation of the city or anything. So we smack the clock hand, which reveals the keyhole for us to seal, and after obtaining another Navi G piece, Neverland is complete. We get some more of that flashback from earlier in the game, continuing where we left off with Riku telling Sora to leave the island. He then interestingly asks about the new girl, obviously referring to Kairi, who apparently arrived on the island on the day of the meteor shower. Where on earth did Kairi come from? Well, give it a minute, you'll find out soon. But it's some nice foreshadowing nevertheless. Riku turns back to face the door and can see the keyhole, which confirms that this mysterious door is essentially the gateway to the heart of the world. So that's our first Kingdom Hearts mystery solved. Only about 100 left. Cut back to the present and Maleficent scolds Riku for bringing Kairi back to Hollow Bastion. They hear a roar and Maleficent hints at who it could be, but I guess we have to go there ourselves to see who the roar could possibly belong to. Riku gets this anime style power up. It looks more like he needs a shower. Back in London, we get a couple of awesome unlocks, the first of which is a summon for Tinkerbell. She passively heals your entire party, and to top it off, she gives a buffed version of Second Chance, which basically allows you to revive at full health instead of just 1 HP. We also get another shared ability, this time it's Glide. Now, don't get too excited, this isn't quite the free flight that we've just been doing in London. In fact, in its current form it's painfully slow, but it will help us to access some more areas we otherwise couldn't. Back on the world map, we unlock the final, maybe, cup at the Colosseum, so we should go and do that before heading to Hollow Bastion. We finally have that fated rematch with Cloud, only this time we're much more powerful than we were 8 hours ago. The final boss of this cup, however, is Hercules. It's quite a strange battle as Hercules has a shield which prevents all damage unless we hurl these crates at him. It's an odd decision, but I suppose they wanted an excuse to tie in that minigame from the start of this world back into the arena. Unfortunately for me, I still have Ripple Drive equipped, and I didn't think to pick up the barrels and throw them at Herc, so I struggled to line it up correctly most of the time. I still beat him first try though, and once I did, I unlocked the Keyblade Olympia, as well as the Yellow Trinity. With the Yellow Trinity, we can finally push that stone slab out of the way, revealing, you'll never believe this, the keyhole. You know what, some of these keyholes are in the most random places, like Ariel just so happened to build her grotto around it, and Oogie Boogie just so happened to build his mansion above it. Anyway, that's another world down. The only one that remains is... Well yeah, it's Hollow Bastion, but first we have to go back to Sid in Traverse Town so he can install the Navi Gummy. Sora looks a bit depressed. Donald and Goofy give him some much needed motivation. What a couple of legends. And Sora has a vision of Kairi as a young child who's in some sort of library. This old woman tells Kairi about the history of light and dark, about how people in the past loved the light, but slowly they started to fight over it, and darkness started to consume their hearts. This swallowed the light, and before long, the world disappeared completely. She says that small fragments of light existed within some children, and it was them who used the light to rebuild the world that they exist in now. But it isn't the true light, which is hidden in the depths of the darkness, which is why these worlds are all scattered. But one day, she says, the door will open and the true light will return. She tells Kairi to believe in the light, and that she can push the darkness away. This is quite an info dump, which honestly tells us so much, whilst also telling us so little. It answers why these characters are so focused on light versus darkness, but it doesn't go too deep into the history of the world before. It's almost like a small hint at what future games could explore, and it's still relatively straightforward. Sure, the concept of light versus dark is simple, and it's something that so many stories have explored before, but Kingdom Hearts, at least in later games in the series, gets quite a bit more profound than this short backstory would have us believe. Actually, this game in particular becomes far more profound and meaningful from this point onwards. I mean, the game started off pretty straightforward, right? We were split up from our friends, so we needed to go explore all of these Disney worlds in order to find them. But it slowly evolved into something a lot darker. Riku slipping, his envy and rage consuming him. Sora, despite being so hopeful for the entire game, is starting to have doubts about his mission. And it only gets crazier from here onwards. I would argue that Kingdom Hearts 1, from Hollow Bastion up to the end of the game, is some of the best hours that this entire franchise has to offer. So let's finally head to Hollow Bastion and rescue Kairi once and for all. The music of Hollow Bastion is possibly one of my favourites. It's at the same time mysterious and also full of urgency. This initial climb up to the castle lets us use the glide ability a bit. We quickly run into Riku and the Beast. Turns out that roar was from the Beast himself, who has come to Hollow Bastion to rescue Belle.
I will have her back!
Take her if you can.
Riku, you're some snot-nosed kid and the Beast is... Well, never mind. Riku brings out that they've always been rivals, like I said at the start, but then he steals our Keyblade. Remember, I just said Sora was starting to doubt himself. In this moment, his heart is weaker than Riku's, which is how Riku is able to take it from him. Donald and Goofy also leave us without hesitation, which is honestly really heartbreaking. But they can't betray the king, right?
Sora, sorry.
So, with only a wooden sword and the Beast at our side, we begin our breach of Hollow Bastion. The front door's locked, so we need to take a quick detour below the castle. We can't attack the Heartless as we don't have the Keyblade, but we can still cast magic, which is how we will dispatch them. The Beast is also quite a formidable ally, and his strength will carry us through this mini dungeon. He can also break down some walls, but it doesn't really have much use outside of giving us access to certain locked chests. By the way, it's such a cool little detail how opening chests now replaces the original clink sound with this hollow tapping sound. Since we now have a wooden sword, we have to activate these switches in the right order to find a final switch, which will open the castle gates. This puzzle isn't difficult, but it breaks up the pace a bit from the usual waves of enemies. So we go back the way we came and enter the castle. We get a quick glimpse of all the princesses that have been kidnapped, as well as Kairi, before Maleficent uses their hearts to reveal Hollow Bastion's keyhole, exactly as she planned. Back in the main hall, the Beast hallucinates Belle, and then runs off, but we thankfully have a touching reunion with Donald and Goofy. Sora realises that his friends are what's important in this anime-style revelation.
You're wrong, Riku. The darkness may destroy my body, but it can't touch my heart. My heart will stay with my friends. It'll never die!
This new commitment from Donald and Goofy reinvigorates him, and he's able to reclaim the Keyblade to Riku's horror. By the way, what's with this getup that Riku's rocking? It's like some sort of symbiote, but nowhere near as cool. So he runs off like a little baby, and we're reunited with the gang. And finally we unlock the final trinity. This one unlocks some of the best items in the game, so we need to use it when we can. Another cool little detail is being able to slide down these pillars, although it's kind of dodgy. The next puzzle is rearranging books. Exciting. But have you noticed something? This library is the exact same one that Kairi was in during that flashback just now, basically confirming that Kairi is originally from Hollow Bastion. I really enjoy the change of pace in Hollow Bastion. It's more focused on like puzzles, and although they're quite simplistic, like lighting these candles and pushing this block, it makes the entire world feel more like a big dungeon, you know? And that's the real strength of Hollow Bastion. As you climb up this tower and continue to push back against even greater odds, it just feels so epic. There's this section where you get on this giant lift and it stops midway through before spawning some of these wizard Heartless. Honestly, it's a little bit underwhelming this time around, but I'll just say it's not the first time you climb this tower. More on that later though. Once we get to the top of the tower, we finally face off against Maleficent herself. Now, unfortunately, I lost my footage of this battle. Just know that I beat her first try. This is not a lie. The dragon, easy. Yeah, I'm sorry about the lost footage, but she transforms into this big dragon and it's really challenging. Once she's defeated though, we can move on to the real boss of Hollow Bastion. It turns out that they are unable to open the keyhole because Kairi's missing her heart, so it buys time for Sora to catch up to them. Entering the room with the princesses is fairly unnerving. They're just locked up like that while this edgelord drains their power. Sora finally uses his brain and clocks it. That guy is not Riku. No, Riku's been consumed by the darkness.
It is I, Ansem, the Seeker of Darkness.
This entire cutscene is etched into my memory. You see, this really cool feature of the original PS2 versions of the game was that you can't skip the cutscenes. So every time you died in any boss fight, you had to rewatch the boss cutscenes every single time. And spoiler alert, Riku here is probably the toughest battle in the entire game. And as a 7-year-old, I died so many goddamn times to him. Like, I'm talking dozens upon dozens of times. So I know every single line of dialogue here. I don't know if it's comedic gold or the most epic thing ever. Anyway, he says that Kairi's heart rests within Sora, which explains why Sora keeps seeing Kairi, and also why he saw Kairi's memories throughout the game, including that slide in Deep Jungle, which was likely Hollow Bastion. Now we finally face off against the man himself, Riku, or is it Ansem? Both? Who knows, but like I said, this battle is incredibly tough. His attacks are lightning fast, so you basically have to be flawless with guards and rolls. And don't even try healing mid-combo because you will die. His attacks are telegraphed mainly by his voice lines, but they happen so quickly that it's not really much help.
Behold the power of darkness!
Once you chip his health away enough and get him down to 1 bar of HP, he does this Open Your Heart to Darkness attack, which requires you to jump and glide above him. Or, and I mentioned this earlier, but if you have Strike Raid equipped, you can use this limit and pretty much iframe through the entire thing. Actually, I use Strike Raid again in order to finish him off. Now we get to, in my opinion, the best moment of the entire game. So Sora's unable to seal the keyhole because Kairi's heart is not free. So he comes up with this genius idea to stab himself in order to free Kairi's heart. Doing so wakes her up. This event has some unthinkable ramifications, and for as silly as Sora stabbing himself sounds, it's actually kind of impactful. Like, he frees all of the princesses by sacrificing himself to the darkness. Once Kairi's awake, Ansem, voiced by Billy Zane, finally makes an appearance, and Riku, now consumed by Ansem, manages to get a bit of a redemption and push Ansem back to give Kairi, Donald and Goofy the chance to escape. Then something really magical happens. We're now in control of a Heartless. You know, the small things that we've been slaughtering for the entire game. Well, now we're one of them. We're able to freely run around Hollow Bastion, but we really need to get back to the entrance hall, where Kairi and the gang are headed. Once there, Donald tries to defeat us, but noticing that it doesn't want to hurt us, Kairi wonders, Sora, is that you? Remember, their hearts are connected, so she could probably sense that Sora was in there somewhere. So she hugs Sora to protect him, and just like that...
Kairi!
Kairi, thank you. Sora!
Sora!
Sora's back. He was the Heartless we just followed around. I believe all of the Heartless that we fought up till now were people whose hearts were lost to darkness. Defeating them doesn't kill the person, at least I don't think it does. Rather, it frees their heart and allows them to return to the light. Hence why Sora uses a Keyblade to defeat them. To seal the darkness, right? It's an apt metaphor, see? We're getting a bit more profound now. This first game has some small hints of the philosophy the later games in the series explore, and obviously Sora becoming a Heartless has some pretty massive ramifications, as I've already said. But I'll save that for the Kingdom Hearts 2 video. I just love this moment so much. It's the most powerful moment of the whole game, and it shows how much Sora's grown throughout the course of the journey. I mean, sure, he stumbled a bit just before Hollow Bastion, but he's learned now, and he's saved Kairi thanks to his selflessness and his courage. Anyway, we leave the beast to fend off the Heartless. He vows to stay in Hollow Bastion to rescue Belle. He also buys time for us to escape, which we do. And it cuts straight back to us in Traverse Town, where Sora explains everything that's already happened. He needs to seal Hollow Bastion's keyhole in order to stop the Heartless from leaking out into other worlds. Before we do that though, we need to visit the underground waterway to connect the final Navi-G piece that Sid has hidden. Once we do, we're treated to a really wholesome moment with, oh my god, Sora, what the hell are you doing? You just rescued her, put the Keyblade away, you maniac. Yeah, for some reason my copy glitched here. I genuinely don't know how, but this heartwarming reunion between Kairi and Sora is kind of ruined by Sora teleporting around the place. Once Sora's calmed down though, Kairi gives Sora a new keychain, the Oath Keeper. This one gives us even more MP. Unfortunately, it seems that Riku is trapped in the darkness all alone, but someone speaks to him. The voice explains that they need to close the door to darkness, but they need 2 keys and 2 hearts in order to do so. So Riku must be trapped in the darkness for a reason, right? Surely he needs to help seal the door when the time comes. It would be one step towards redemption, I suppose. So we need to travel back to Hollow Bastion yet again, and honestly the immediate revisit hurts the game's pace just a tad. I mean, we literally just climbed all the way up the castle, and now we have to do it again, straight away. The difference now is that the Heartless are much stronger than before, but in any case, once we land in Hollow Bastion, we're reunited with the Beast, who tells us that the princesses are still in the castle. So we need to go to the library, where the Beast is finally reunited with Belle. We still need to go back to the keyhole though, so pressing forward and going all the way up, using the giant lift and taking care of the waves of Heartless, we make it up to the chapel that we defeated Maleficent in. The other princesses are there, including Snow White, Sleeping Beauty and Cinderella, who we haven't seen yet. It turns out that they've been staying inside the castle to help hold back the Heartless, but they're obviously not doing a great job considering the amount I had to contend with. But we finally make it back to the chamber that we fought Ansem in and enter the Dark Depths. Now we have to face off against the Behemoth. This is quite a slow Heartless whose attacks are very easily telegraphed. The trick is to climb onto his back and chip away at his horn until he's staggered. He goes into an invulnerable state once recovering, unleashing a flurry of attacks that I think are impossible to evade. You can quite easily recover though. Remember earlier when I said gravity will help out in a certain boss? Well, it turns out that Donald likes to spam gravity non-stop on the Behemoth until he has no MP left. It does do a decent amount of damage against the Behemoth though. Unfortunately, this is the first of many Behemoth fights in the game, and it becomes fairly tedious to battle, especially since he has such a large health pool and poses little challenge. So we defeat the Behemoth and get ready to seal the keyhole, but we're greeted by our old Final Fantasy friends. Leon explains that he, Yuffie and Aerith all came from Hollow Bastion, so they came to see it one more time. Once Sora seals the keyhole and defeats Ansem, all of the worlds should be restored, including Destiny Islands. However, it means that they will now once again be separated, making travel between the worlds more difficult than it is now. Now that the keyhole has been sealed, Sora's only goal is to go find Ansem. Thankfully, the Disney princesses seem to know exactly where Ansem is hiding. They give us our final fire upgrade and we set off for our final destination. Calling the final area End of the World is quite funny to me. It's like the game is telling us, yes, this really is it. And it looks the part too. This purple haze and scattered chests strewn across this landscape looks really epic. We don't have a lot of time to take in the sights though, as we're rudely interrupted by this giant purple orb, which transports us to this small arena to face off against the new Heartless type. These giant great sword wielding guys. They're the toughest basic mobs in the game, and you better get used to them because you'll be fighting them a lot. Thanks to my trusty strike raid though, I was able to defeat them with little issues. I really love the way that this area is laid out too, where it's full of invisible walls until you open one of these chests, which then reveal the surrounding landscape. Unfortunately, you're kind of gambling whether or not each chest is a trap, and this red one has another Behemoth inside it despite the fact that we just fought one. It also gives you significantly less XP, and once defeated provides you with a materia. You have to follow the direction that these small bits of land are pointing in, and after finally making it to the end you're forced to fight another, you'll never guess this, another Behemoth. Yeah, it seems like they were really proud of this specific boss fight because, spoiler alert, you have to battle it a few more times throughout this world. Once defeated though, we get taken into this more chilled out location which contains a few chests including a powerful new weapon for Donald and a save point. I like to think of this area as the calm before the storm, and the next room contains a bunch of these portals. Going through them transports us back to a specific room from each of the Disney worlds we've visited throughout the game, usually with a chest hidden somewhere, containing some of the best loot in the game. They're completely optional though, except from the last one, and this green one takes us back to the 100 Acre Wood, which, on theme, simply contains a save point. So this final portal, it takes us back to a completely unfamiliar location. This hallway with this gigantic Heartless emblem blocking our path. Defeating all the Heartless and entering this side room, we get another load of text. It's honestly quite confusing, and as far as I remember, this specific location is never seen or even mentioned again in later games. The terminal mentions Kingdom Hearts itself, saying that great darkness is sealed within the heart of the Door of Darkness, and it seals the light. I'm pretty sure that this is just meant to be confusing for the sake of it, though I would welcome some explanations in the comments. Once we've cleared all the Heartless and been thrown back outside, a giant hole appears where the portal once was. Jumping down, we're faced with another flying boss fight. This time it's Chernobog from the film Fantasia, complete with Night on Bald Mountain to accompany it just as the scene plays out in the original movie. Yeah, they just had to throw in one more Disney scene. And honestly, I welcome it. We've firmly been in the Kingdom Hearts universe for the last 5 hours or so, so it's nice to finally get some more Disney stuff. But this boss is pretty tough. Chernobog has no less than 5 health bars. You can't just spam attacks because he does this huge AoE attack, and if you aren't out of the way of it, then you will be stun-locked and die immediately. Chernobog can also spout fire from his mouth and use wind to fling you all the way across the arena, forcing you to fly all the way back. So you really have to stay focused and fly away as soon as he bends down and crosses his arms. Unfortunately, if you're positioned behind him, it becomes quite difficult to see what he's doing as the camera doesn't zoom itself out, and he's so large that he obscures the entire image. Take a look at this though. I just spammed fire and used my keyblade like a makeshift machine gun, which took almost 2 full health bars away from him. Once he gets down to about 1 health bar, he likes to summon fireballs, which magnetize themselves to Sora, as well as these blue orbs, which do the exact same thing. And it becomes incredibly difficult to find any opening to attack him. I found out eventually, definitely not by looking online, that you can just land on the volcano below him and summon Tinkerbell, giving us constant healing and a free revive. After about 20 minutes of attempts, I finally took him down, which revealed the way through and unlocked Super Glide. Yeah, now we can glide at an actual manageable speed. It's even faster than walking actually, which makes for a satisfying late game reward. Now, before we get to what I like to call the Room of Pain and Suffering, I decided to exit the end of the world and explore some of the previous worlds a bit. I wasn't under-leveled per se. Sora was level 49 at this point, but I figured that with the new Super Glide I might as well do a bit of backtracking. So the first thing I did was go back to the Colosseum, where there's yet another cup for us to do. This time though, instead of just 10 rounds, there's a whopping 50. Now I didn't do every single round as some of these later rounds require a high level, and I really didn't want to grind if I could help it. But we completed the first 10 rounds, which includes another rematch with a buffed up Yuffie, and yet another Behemoth. Only this time it has a new fiery colour palette and even more health. I'll spare you the details of all the exploration I did, but when I returned to the end of the world, I was a much more comfortable level 51. I felt much more equipped to enter the Room of Pain and Suffering. And suffer we will, because we have to face off against yet another, and thankfully the last, Behemoth of the game, followed by about 15 minutes of non-stop Heartless, in order to break all of the seals on this door. And I kind of have a bone to pick with this door, because it likes to linger on this final state, where there's only a tiny bit remaining for the majority of this section. Heartless just keep on spawning perpetually, and it feels like it'll never end. It is very, very tough, and there's no worse feeling than getting right to the end and dying last minute. Thankfully, with a well-timed Tinkerbell spawn and lots of strike raids, we managed to just barely scrape through, finally making it to the final rest. Yep, that's right, after many hours, we're finally at the point of no return. This game likes to warn us as well. This is it. This is the final battle against Ansem, so you better be prepared. I equipped my best potions, no elixirs because I foolishly used them all on Chernobog, and stepped through the door to arrive in... Destiny Islands? That's right, we're back where we started. We get to walk around this now lifeless beach, obviously heading straight to the cave, before Billy Zane starts talking to us. We see Riku standing on the now destroyed beach, although he sounds different.
Take a look at this tiny place. To the heart-seeking freedom, this island is a prison, surrounded by water. And so this boy sought out to escape from his prison.
Ah, there he is. This entire speech is so epic. Billy Zane does such a fantastic job here, and it's a shame he didn't reprise his role in future games. And so it begins, phase 1 of this crazy boss rush. Ansem has a number of attacks, and like Riku before him, a lot of them are telegraphed by his voice lines. Donald and Goofy die pretty much immediately, because of course they do. He likes to throw these Beyblades at us non-stop, but the attack that we really need to look out for is his submit attack. As if it connects, his Heartless buddy there will just magnetize to us and periodically attack us, whilst Ansem binds himself in this cage of light and flies towards us. I found that casting Strike Raid actually prevents both the Guardian and Ansem from hitting us though, and we get some free hits on Ansem too, So it's by far the most effective way to deal with it. Really though, this particular phase isn't too tough, and once we defeat him, he runs off and rudely destroys this giant tree in the centre of the beach, splitting the entire ground in two. Following him into this newly opened sinkhole, he summons another dark side. It's been a while since we saw one of those. It's just as easy as it was at the start of the game though, and fighting it gets kind of annoying because once defeated you're thrust straight into another boss, and if you die you have to fight both of them again. But anyway, once defeated we must battle Ansem, only this time he has a slightly upgraded moveset, and we're completely alone this time. When he's been beaten down to just 2 health bars, he does this My Strength Returns attack, where his guardian comes out of the ground about 10 times and does a number of AoE attacks. If you super glide out of the way though, you can usually avoid it. Another attack of his is this Take This supersonic thing he does. And this is where guard is extremely important, as if timed correctly you can cancel his entire attack. These attacks aren't that easy to telegraph though, as they happen quite quickly, so it requires absolute focus. Overall though, it's generally a well-designed boss fight, and it's similar to the Souls games where once you've learned his attack patterns, you can take him down with little issue. Thankfully, after defeating Ansem we get a checkpoint, as we're pulled into the endless abyss, and wow, we finally see Kingdom Hearts. Is that the door to darkness? Ansem is transformed into this Eldritchian abomination, and we have to do another flying battle. This is, in my opinion, the most difficult boss fight in the entire game. His basic moveset isn't hard to dodge, as he just does a flurry of sword swings, but he hits like a truck and he can spawn these beams of light, which I'm pretty sure are rendered in 2D. I don't know, it's basically impossible to see where they're going to hit. The depth perception is all messed up. It gets even worse when he has 1 health bar remaining though, as these light rays just constantly fire on you. Like, how the hell am I supposed to attack this guy? It's literally just an endurance game where you have to have a bunch of MP left to tank these hits and just heal constantly. I don't know, I really dislike this phase of the boss. It's so frustrating and I never cracked the code. So after stumbling through and somehow getting lucky and draining all his health, Ansem strikes this weird ass pose and summons this portal which teleports us to a pitch black room full of these tiny Heartless. From here on out the rest of the fight's pretty easy. It's funny how these Heartless now give us 30 XP as opposed to 1 at the start of the game. They also drop a bunch of potions which get quick equipped to our command list. They definitely come in clutch. Back outside and we have to destroy these weird tendril things before once again being pulled into that dark room. The difference this time is that Goofy has joined us. I died here and it scared the crap out of me because I thought I'd have to redo that entire Ansem battle, but no, thankfully there are ample checkpoints in this section of the battle. We have to rip off this head, which is honestly really easy. We basically rinse and repeat this until both Donald and Goofy are back in our party, and once outside for a final time we enter the ship and smack this heart around a bit. Man, we're completely rinsing Ansem now. Anyway, his seal is now broken, which commences this final phase. The difference now is that we can summon Tinkerbell to give us constant healing, and Donald and Goofy just completely make a fool out of this poor guy in one of the most satisfying onslaughts ever. We completely demolish Ansem's health bar, and with that, we've completed Kingdom Hearts.
Dark! Is this the answer? It can't be.
Ansem explodes into nothingness. Man, after that eldritch abomination, this version of Ansem looks pretty pathetic. He's still strong enough to open the door to darkness though. Yep, Kingdom Hearts obliterates Ansem and we're able to rush over to the door. Looking inside, and yeah, Kingdom Hearts might actually not be light. It's futile though, until Riku appears on the other side. Remember earlier when that voice told him to seal the door? And then...
Your Majesty!
Now, Sora, let's close this door for good.
Close that crap!
But
it's the king! It's honestly heartbreaking leaving Riku and Mickey in the realm of darkness as the door disappears and leaves them trapped together. It's about time that Riku started to redeem himself though. Kairi ends up here somehow, and then we switch to full-blown CGI. Now that they've sealed the door to darkness, the worlds begin to heal, and as Leon said, this means that they're separated. So whilst Kairi returns to Destiny Islands, Sora doesn't. Why doesn't he go back with her? Well, to me it shows that he hasn't fulfilled his destiny just yet. Remember, his entire goal throughout the game was to find Riku and Kairi. But with Riku still trapped in the realm of darkness, his journey simply isn't over. It's the same for both Donald and Goofy too. Mickey's also trapped in the realm of darkness, so they can't return to Disneyland just yet either. Regardless, this is an incredibly poignant ending, and while not entirely satisfying, seeing Kairi return to Destiny Islands is just enough for me to think that this ending is excellent. Oh yeah, and that's the other thing. We learn that Kairi's originally from Hollow Bastion, right? But she returns to Destiny Islands instead. Why? Well, it's her home. It's not about where you come from, it's where you end up, right? And the friends that Kairi made in Destiny Islands and the experiences that she had means that that is the place that she can call home. And therein lies the beauty of Kingdom Hearts 1. It's not overly convoluted like later entries in the series. You could almost say it's simple and clean. Sorry. Yeah, it's kind of cheesy and dumb, but it has so much heart. For a stupid Disney game, it really lays down the philosophy, and not in a way that's pretentious. It takes this basic black and white morality that Disney movies are known for, and it just runs to the hills with it, and I love it for that. Obviously, later games get way more abstract and confusing, and the post-credit scene has a little bit of a teaser for Kingdom Hearts 2. A letter from Mickey addresses Sora directly, telling him that he's the one that will open the door to the light. Does he do that? Well, I guess we'll find out when we play Kingdom Hearts 2. But yeah, Kingdom Hearts is such a special game to me, and in my opinion it still holds up. Like sure, some of the level design is needlessly convoluted. There are some obnoxious difficulty spikes, and the opening hours don't really do the combat justice at all. But the story's engaging and the characters are fleshed out, and all of the cameos from Final Fantasy characters and of course the Disney characters are so full of charm. You know, for such an out there concept which really didn't have any reason to work, for it to actually work as well as it does is a testament to the passion that Square put into faithfully recapturing the magic of these Disney movies. They respect the source material really tastefully, and it shows in every aspect of this game. Hey everyone, I'm sorry about this. I'm not well at the minute, but thank you so much for watching this entire video. I mean, I know it was a long one, but Kingdom Hearts is a game that means so much to me, and I just feel honoured that I'm able to make like a feature-length video about it. I just wanted to lay out my plans real quick about like future games. I'm not planning to do them all like back to back to back, because I feel like if I did like 6, 7, full-length, feature-length videos all in a row, I feel like I'd probably burn myself out a bit. So I'm planning to get one out every 2 to 3 months or so. Basically throughout 2025, when there's like a down period, when there's no games coming out that, I want to check out, I'll be working on Kingdom Hearts videos. So I do hope to get, obviously I'm going to end with the Kingdom Hearts 3 video. Hopefully I'll get that out, by the end of 2025. But I mean, who knows? Because, later games in the franchise are even longer. Kingdom Hearts 1 is like the shortest one, and this video is almost 2 hours. So I can only imagine what like the Kingdom Hearts 2 or the Kingdom Hearts 3 video is going to be like. So that's why I don't want to do them all in one go, because I don't want to burn myself out so quickly. And also, like, I'm new to YouTube as well. This is only the second video I've ever done. So yeah, that's about it. Make sure that you subscribe so when the new Kingdom Hearts videos come out, you know and you're aware that they're out. And also, I'd appreciate the support, because again, I'm new to YouTube. But yeah, that's about it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.